David Barton is Glenn Beck's historian, and he was speaking on an episode of a show called WallBuilders Live, and he shared a tremendously unnerving notion about how he thinks we should run our government.
How does God measure righteousness in a nation? Quite frankly, what is the standard for righteousness in a nation? Or for that matter, as you look across the Bible, you have Exodus 18:21, where it talks about not only national, but you also have things at the state level. What's the standard for righteousness at the state level? What's the standard for righteousness at what we would call the county level or the local level? You look at those leaders of tens, fifties, hundreds, thousands in the Bible, all those. How does God measure righteousness in any of those areas? And the answer is by the public policies they have and by how well those policies conform to God's standards. That public policies is something that God can bless, or is it something He's going to have to oppose, and that's what exalts a nation. And because God bases righteousness on public policies you have, public policies affect every single person in the area, even if they disagree with that policy. Probably 90% of the city of San Antonio disagrees with that non-discrimination ordinance, but that city has taken a position God cannot bless. That's going to affect 100% of the people in the city, even if 90% disagree with the policy.
Wow. That's scary, and it's very important you understand what he's advocating for, because you need to know that people like this exist. And they've been fairly mainstreamed. Like I said, he's Glenn Beck's historian. Beck has him on all the time to make up shit about American history. Okay, and what he just said was public policy should go by God's standard. Period. Period. No, it shouldn't. That would mean we are a theocracy. We are a fascist, tyrannical nation that goes by somebody's religion. You know who actually does that today, that apparently David Barton would be jealous of? Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia does that. Iran does that to an extent. I mean, it's amazing how much these guys agree with those guys. The Christian radicals agree with the Muslim radicals, but then they act like, no, they're our enemy. We don't like them because they have darker skin and they have wear like headdresses and looks weird and shit. And I'm not familiar with that environment. So, yeah, we're nothing like them, even though we're exactly like them. No, you really are a lot like them. And then the scariest part was when he said, even if 90% of the public wants to do X, if X is against God's will, or in other words, his interpretation of what God's will is, well, then you disregard the 90%. So you're admitting you don't believe in democracy. You're admitting you don't believe in the American way. And of course, the American way, not only is it democracy, it's also separation of church and state, the Establishment Clause. How many times in the Constitution do they mention God? 0. How about Jesus? 0. The Bible? 0. And the only time they mention religion is to say you shall not establish one at the state level. Sorry, you shall not establish a religion. There's no religious test for office. He's saying the exact opposite. I mean, think about that. So take Saudi Arabia, for example, where they just beheaded 19 people in the month of August for drug smuggling. Somebody was mentally ill and they cut off their head. Somebody for sorcery, so they just made it up. They just, I don't know, fucking sorcery, kill him, whatever, chop his head off. So if 90% of people in a civilized society say, hey, maybe we should stop cutting people's heads off for shit that doesn't exist, like dark arts and sorcery, David Barton would say, no, it doesn't matter what 90% believe. My religion tells me to kill people, so I'm going to fucking kill people and chop their head off for nothing. I mean, think about what's in the Bible, too. No working on Sunday. If you work on Sunday, you're supposed to get killed. Well, David Barton said, only God's standard is all we should base our society on. So even if 100% of people say, yeah, don't kill them if they work on Sunday, don't care, kill them. You're not allowed to eat shrimp, crab, any shellfish. Well, we have to shut down the fish market. Oh, you guys, 99% of you want the fish market to stay open? Sorry, we're banning it because the Bible, God's standard, is all that matters. Women need to sleep outside when they're on their period. Sorry, it's law. Oh, you slept inside with your husband when you were menstruating? Sorry, we're going to have to kill you now. I mean, look, just God's standard is all that matters. No, you could use the Bible to justify any crazy nonsense, and some of the rules in there are some of the dumbest things I've ever read in my life. But this moron doesn't even know what's in his holy book, and he still says, well, let's base our entire society off that. Or not, because that would make it the most unbearable society in human history, and it would be the opposite of a free society and the opposite of a democracy. But thank you for admitting you don't believe in those things.